am Senator Jay Kahn, and today we are holding a monthly meeting on the Commission on Holocaust and Genocide Education. Before we get started, I will read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As the chairman of the Commission on Holocaust and Genocide Education, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone and with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom or YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided in the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remotesenate@ledge.state.nh.us or call 603-271-3043. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that any votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And finally, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where they are and if anyone else is in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I'm Senator Jay Kahn. I am in Keene in my home. My wife is elsewhere in the House. And Representative Wolf, who I do not see. Representative Ellison.
Yes, I'm present. I'm home alone in Concord.
Thank you. Ashley Harbaugh.
Ashley Harbaugh. I am at home in my office in Goffstown, New Hampshire. My husband is in the house.
Welcome, Ashley. Superintendent Balke.
Good afternoon. I am alone in my office in Goffstown.
Thank you, Brian. Dr. Waller.
I am in my home office in Spofford, New Hampshire, currently alone.
Thank you. Welcome, Jim. Marna Ducharme. Let's see, Marna. And don't see Bishop Labashi either. No. Tom White.
Tom White in the office at the Cohen Center, and I am alone.
To be at Keene State College in beautiful city of Keene. Dina Chadowitz.
I am at home in my window. My husband's in another part of the house.
Thank you, Dina. Welcome. Reverend Harmon. Don't see him either. A busy weekend for them. Rabbi Spiro Savat.
Hi, I'm here at my home in Nashua. In the house are my 3 kids. It's possible someone might poke in to ask me a question.
Welcome, John. And Kathy Preston, who we think has a conflict. Robert Treston.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm at home in Dover, Massachusetts, and my wife is in the home somewhere, but not in the room I'm in. Thanks.
Welcome, Robert. And Eve Kunde.
Good afternoon, Eve Gakunde. I'm in my home in Keene, and I'm alone.
Thank you, Eve. And I notice if you are looking at okay, I see. Okay, Zach. Hi, Zach.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. I, for some reason, can't find the panelist login, so I had to log in as a member of the public. So sorry about that.
And somebody see the panelist invite? It was sent like recently.
I can promote him to panelist from the attendees list, so I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Zach.
We can't see you though. Are you
I can.
your camera live?
There we go.
Here we go.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Oh, you want to just state where you are and if anyone else is in the room?
Sure. I am Reverend Zach Harmon in my home in Goffstown, and no one else is here.
Thank you, Reverend. So with that, I'm sorry, we have a new member, Evan Zazowski. And Evan, if I please repeat your name and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Evan Chizovsky. It's like a CH sound. And I am a teacher at Bedford High School, which is where I'm having this meeting. I'm in a closed classroom, so there's no one in here with me, but there are other people in the building.
And while we're on this, Evan, welcome to the committee. Why don't you say some introductory words? We did have, I'll explain that we've had a member designated through the statute from the National Education Association New Hampshire branch to be designated, in fact, a curriculum development specialist. So I assume that that's part of your portfolio, Evan.
Yeah, I was testifying for this bill, and the government relations director for NEA New Hampshire saw me there and called me recently and said, "We have an appointment on this commission. Would you like to do it?" And I said, "Of course." And I'm looking around and I see faces and names that I recognize. Tom, I've known for a long time. Dina, I met a couple of years ago, and Ashley and I used to be colleagues at Sanborn for many years together. And as far as my interest in this work, I've been thinking about the Holocaust for as long as I can remember. My father is a refugee from Poland who escaped during the Cold War, and my grandparents lived through World War II. And although my grandparents and my family were not Jewish, my grandfather was nonetheless rounded up in one of the roundups and taken to Auschwitz in a train, and along a transfer station was able to escape, which is, I guess, partially the reason that I'm here today. So it's always sort of been in my mind. And I went to Poland to teach and look up some of this history. And years later, I said, can I bring some of this to school? And so as we were reading Night by Elie Wiesel, I asked the principal if we could start a program at school where we watched Schindler's List for the day and then had guest speakers come in to talk to students. And that's how I met Tom, looking for guest speakers. And about 10 years ago now, I think, is when I first met Kathy Preston. And she's been coming to speak to schools since then as part of the program that I've been running. And now that I teach at Bedford High School, I've brought her here as well. And in the course of that program, I had students ask if we could learn more about this by going to these places. And so I contacted a local travel company. I said, "Hey, could I take students on a trip to Poland?" And they kind of looked at me like, "Well, we've never been there, but if you know the place, we can help support that." And so I organized a trip that actually Ashley has come on now a couple of times with me. And I had continued the trip over at Bedford High School, but unfortunately, due to COVID, it was canceled last year. So we hope to have that trip again in the future, but that's some of the work that I've been doing around the Holocaust. And I just found out a couple of days ago that I'll be teaching a class next year called Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Bedford High School. So this is a very timely moment for me to be on this committee. So I thank you all, and I appreciate being here.
Excellent. Thank you for that introduction. The first item on our agenda is to consider the minutes of our February 11th meeting. Believe it or not, it's been nearly 2 months. And hopefully you've seen those minutes a few times. So I'll take a motion for approval, and then we can see if there are any additions or corrections.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Jeff. Thank you, Tom. Any comments? I appreciate Dina's work on those minutes. Thank you very much, Dina. And seeing no comments, I'll need to read the roll. Representative Ellison,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
Superintendent Balke,
Yes.
Dr. Waller,
Yes.
Martin is still not with us. Tom,
Yes.
Dina,
Yes.
Carmen,
Yes.
Rabbi Spira Sabat.
Was not there, right? I think abstain. Sorry.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. Robert, Tristan,
Yes.
Eve.
Yes.
All right. We chair votes yes too.
I abstain.
Thank you. I got to get you on that list. Sorry, I'm reading off of something. All right, don't need to do that. We can just read the tiles. Okay, moving on to next agenda topic, which would be to, sorry, get rid of some things here. Which is to turn to our committee on policies. And I want to turn this over to Superintendent Balke. I need to recognize Amanda Phelps as I do that, and Nate Green from the Department of Education. They are, I talked with Nate about the Board of Education meeting coming this month, and he informed me that one of the other staff members of the Department of Education had been working to prepare the standards for review by the board, at least for discussion purposes at their April meeting. So it seemed timely to invite Nate and Amanda Phelps to join us. So I've recognized them to join this conversation. And Superintendent, if you'd like to lead this part of the meeting, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As always, nice to be with you. And Evan, welcome to the committee. It's great to hear your background and appreciate what you bring to the table. So thank you for joining us, and thanks for being with us. And same to Amanda and to Nate. So thank you very much for joining us today. The update from the committee will recall that in the February timeframe, we presented at the state board and proposed draft language to change the minimum standards. Ashley and Marna did a great job presenting and answering questions for the state board. And in March, the state board did not put it on their agenda, but they do have it on their agenda for this coming Thursday, April 8th. So first glance, I saw the agenda packet posted on the Department of Ed's website today. It looks like the language looked largely unchanged to me. So maybe Nate could speak to that if there were any changes that the department is recommending that the state board consider. But essentially the process will be that the state board will review and discuss this coming Thursday. We would then expect.
We asked if you're not speaking, mute your mic. Thanks. We just got some feedback there. Thank you.
Gotcha. So we would anticipate this Thursday that the language that'll be reviewed and discussed by the state board, that they would then allow for a period of public comment before the board would take further action. So that would be our understanding. And then beyond that, the next step in the process is that the rules, the rule change would have to be approved by the Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, or JALCAR. And so that's essentially the state of the state. I do plan on being at the state board meeting on Thursday if there are any questions. And again, last time, I know Ashley and Marna were in the queue. I can let you guys know if and when we come up, but it's hard to know what the state board's agenda timeline will be. So the meeting, I believe, starts at 9, but it's unclear when we would, when the minimum standards would be discussed. Ashley?
I actually have an asynchronous day that day because our teachers are getting the vaccine on Wednesday, their second shot. So I can definitely pop into that meeting, just if you want to send me a message like you did last time, when you think we might be able to come up, because I'll be working from home that day.
Great. And anyone who wants to participate, you do have to register. And the link to register is right on the Department of Ed's website. If you look at the state board location, you can register for that meeting on this Thursday. So, Senator, those would be the high level overviews, but I might pause there and see if Nate or Amanda have anything that they'd like to share, and then if there are any questions from the commission.
Hi, Brian. This is Nate Gray with the Department of Ed. Can you hear me?
Sure can. Thanks for being with us, Nate.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I know Amanda's on as well. So I can go over just real briefly some of the changes that were made. As you and the senator had both kind of mentioned, there were no substantive changes made to any of the content recommended by the committee. Essentially, what Amanda has done is she's put that content at the end of the current academic minimum standards. When I say academic content, I mean the standards that are specific to English and social studies and science and math. The minimum standards themselves were a pretty expansive document. So the bulk of the content that was suggested by the committee went at the end of those academic standards. But then as we went through the rules, there were a couple of places where it seemed to make sense to also add in references to that new section of the minimum standards. And those are the specific edits and changes that Amanda has done when she went through the rules. I'll kick it over to her in just a minute to talk more in depth about that. But just as sort of an example, at the very beginning of the minimum standards, there's a section on school board policy, and it lays out many of the required policies that a school board has to have in place. We added mention in that section to the Holocaust and Genocide standards because there is language in there that was recommended by the committee specific to a policy for school boards. And there were a couple of other places where it just made sense to embed references to the Holocaust and Genocide minimum standards that were already at the other end. So Amanda, do you want to talk a little bit more in detail about that?
Hi. Yes, I can talk in more detail about the changes in each individual section. I did send a copy of the rules to everyone on the committee. I don't know if you guys received those. So you did? Okay, great. So as Nate stated, I took your recommendations, your language, and I read through it, and it made sense because you recommended there be a school board policy that we put that part in the rules for school board policy. And then also in the kindergarten through grade 8 school.
Can just, did everybody have a chance to see what Ashley had sent? Ashley, I have the document open, but I don't, it was about sometime this morning that you'd sent it?
That Amanda had sent?
That Amanda had sent, yes, I'm sorry.
Amanda, I got it. I know I hadn't had a chance to go through it yet though.
Just if we need to send that around the folks, but it might be helpful for you to follow what she's.
Alternatively, we could bring it up on the screen if we'd like.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, let me track it down. Go ahead, Amanda. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll find the document and I'll bring it up.
For those of you who have the document open and are following along, I will go in order. So the first rule that is opening up is ED 306.04, so policy development. And I added under A 25 and a new letter I, that graduation competencies consistent with for graduation and content areas, and then it lists Holocaust and genocide education there. And then the next rule.
That Amanda, just for clarity, that's bringing it consistent with the statute.
Correct. And when civics was added, we did the same thing. So I'm being consistent with how we have incorporated new standards into all of our rules. So then if you move on, I don't have page numbers on my document. I printed it out before I put them on there. Yeah, 306.26 kindergarten through grade 8 school curriculum. Thank you. And then if you scroll to the next page, so there, yeah, it says, so this is for the elementary grades 1 through 8, where no middle school has been established. It points to the new standards relative to Holocaust and genocide education. And I put as applicable because when you read further in the rules, you recommended that it start at grade 6 or later. So that is the as applicable piece there. On the next page, it's added for middle school. Also as applicable because some middle schools start in 4th grade, some start in 5th, some start in 6th. So we put as applicable there so that they can refer to when it actually has to start. Then if you scroll to the next page, this is still under the kindergarten curriculum. A new letter H, which incorporates your language of requiring Holocaust and genocide education as described in ED 306.49, which is where the meat of your rules is now, and then implemented not later than 6th grade and continuing through 8th grade as a component of a course in social studies, English language arts, or both, and across the curriculum as applicable. So they have that there for reference in their kindergarten through grade 8 curriculum requirements. Is there any questions so far?
You know, you have touched on some of the things that were part of our conversation as we were going through. And Nate had given us some advice that by putting this into 306.49 as an independent standard, that and you just integrated it back into the sections so well. So I thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you. So then the next section
below there's a strikeout. Are they going to be looking at some other changes at the same time, or?
So because there's a date that's 2016, we had standards that were effective at the same time. And so we had 2 rules for the same thing. And so this is a carryover that from a previous rule change. And I know that OLS will probably raise it as a comment. And it's not necessary to have that date anymore because the other rule that was in place at the same time doesn't exist anymore.
So will that be a part of this overall consideration?
It will, because there was a change to the rulemaking statute. We used to be able to just open the section that we wanted to amend in regular rulemaking, but there was a change to the statute, and we are no longer allowed to we have to open an entire rule part if we want to change a rule now. Which means everything's up for edit, and OLS will go through the whole entire rule, not just the stuff that we're changing.
Thanks for that clarification. I noticed Representative Wolf has joined us. Greetings.
Good afternoon.
Where are you today?
I am in my office in New London, New Hampshire, and I am by myself at this point.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Amanda.
That's okay. Okay, so high school, if you scroll down, you'll see the edit. This one did not need the as applicable language because it's required in all years of high school. And then if you scroll.
And just to clarify, required in all years of high school, that it can't be offered at high school, right? It doesn't, that's why it's like that is, can you just clarify that?
Yeah, it says the local school board shall require that a program of studies shall be offered for each high school.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not in each year of high school.
Correct. But yes, what I meant was it didn't start in 10th grade or 11th grade. It starts in 9th grade in high school. Okay, so that, I think you have to scroll through a few pages before you get to the next edit. Yeah. So this is where it explains, just like in the middle school curriculum rule, this is the same thing. It's implemented not later than 6th grade and continuing through grade 12 as a component of a course in social studies, English language arts, or both, and across a curriculum as applicable. So that's incorporating it into the high school curriculum. And now we get into English language arts and social studies program. If you scroll to the bottom of the English language arts rule, you will see, now we say pursuant to 306.26H, which is the middle school curriculum rule, and 306.27AJ, the high school curriculum rule, the local school board shall require that if not provided in the social studies program, an English language arts and reading program in each grade, provides comprehensive instruction in Holocaust and Genocide education as described in 306.49. So we're pointing to the standards there as well. Are there questions on that part?
Amanda, when it says in each grade, this is Ashley. I just feel like I'm reading that funny, maybe that part right there. That if not provided in the social studies program, an English language arts and reading program in each grade provides, because it's not every year that they're getting comprehensive Holocaust and genocide education.
You're right.
And I would read that.
So just take that part out and I think
okay.
We'll read correctly.
Okay.
You're right. Thank you for catching that.
You're welcome. I was like, oh, people will be mad at me if I have it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So then we're moving to, this is where they break out the social studies program by elementary school, middle school, and high school. So in the first section, it's going to be pointing to 306.26H, which is for elementary and middle school. And then the next one is for just middle school. So then we point to the same one for that because that's all in the same rule. And then the next one's for the high school, saying that it's required in their social studies and English language arts programs. And then then we're on the meat of your rule. So that's what you recommended as the standards, and I did not change anything. There are no edits to the actual standards that you recommended.
So Amanda, quick question. Even though you nested it under social studies, because we have that wording above that, that still gives us the wiggle room that it can be in an English or a reading course as well?
Correct.
Okay, just double checking.
Yep. They can put it in both. They can put it in everything.
So Amanda, I wonder if it might be helpful for you to talk a little bit about what the state board will do on Thursday.
Sure. Right now, it's on their agenda as a discussion item only. So I'm sure they will have questions. And so you had said, Brian, that you're going to be at the meeting in case
I
they do
will.
have questions.
Yes.
So yeah, it's going to be a discussion item. It's right now a draft initial proposal. And then I anticipate that it will go back on the agenda again in May for a vote on the initial proposal. Once that gets approved by the State Board of Education, it goes to OLS, and the attorneys for Jelcar will make comments on the rule. And it will also have a public hearing. So if the initial proposal's approved in May, there will be probably a July at the earliest public hearing for that rule. And I have all of your email addresses now, so I can keep you apprised of where we are in the rulemaking process as it moves forward. And then after the public hearing, it will go back to the state board. If there were any recommended edits, they will go into a final proposal. And then that final proposal goes back to OLS again, Office of Legislative Services, to be heard by Jelcar at their next meeting. Jelcar approves it. It goes back to the state board again for adoption.
Great. Amanda, one of the things that we've talked at length at the commission about, and Nate was part of the conversation as well, we know that the social studies standards in New Hampshire are being revised. And one of the discussions that the commission has had has been whether or not any of these minimum standard language changes could or should be incorporated into the new social studies frameworks. I wonder if you could speak to that, please.
I don't work with any of the curriculum or content people here on staff. I think Nate can probably answer that question for you.
Any other thoughts or reactions to that, Nate?
So my understanding right now is that the social studies standards are on hold. I don't have much more information beyond that, though it's certainly conceivable that once we get to a point where the social studies standards are taken back up again, that this could be taken up alongside that and combined into that effort.
But in the meantime, Nate, it certainly makes sense for the work to continue, for the state board to continue to reevaluate the changes to the minimum standards and not wait for the social studies curriculum framework, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I would, at this point in time, I would not wait for the social studies work.
Okay, thank you.
And Nate, just to, put a dot on that I, the social studies does have standards. They just haven't, the update to those standards hasn't progressed, but we have a statute here that doesn't have rules and need to get put in place to bring education rules and implementation into line with state statute. Right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Senator,
Right,
can I ask a question?
Document one more time.
You want to back up?
I noticed on the last page in 49, there is one typo there, and I had to go back to the original document that we moved in our February 5th meeting in the minutes. It's in 1C, and it's the word on the second line, into. There are two. It reads, as we approved it, have evolved in the past into genocide and mass violence, as opposed to the way it reads currently.
Oh, so instead of into, gotcha.
Got it. I will make that change.
Senator, can I ask a question about process on this?
Please, Jim.
I'm in conversation with the State Board of Education. They want me to come in and do a presentation on issues related to diversity, and I think it has more to do with HB 544 than this particular legislation, and we still haven't set the date on that yet. But I have been aware of some other speakers they brought in for some of these discussions on diversity, and they've trended a little more conservative with respect to that bill. Are we anticipating any blowback from that affecting this particular piece of legislation?
It's a great question, and I can just ponder an answer to that. So, House Bill 544 is the propagation of diverse concepts. That's the language behind it, and the House will take that bill up as a recommend to pass, ought to pass motion on, I believe, Thursday, and our House members can correct us on that. It has also been incorporated into the House Appropriations recommendation, HB2, which means that it could be tabled and not voted on by the House because it's already carried in an appropriation bill, which, is not the way a policy ought to happen, but sometimes that's what happens. I would say that that legislation is very specific to racial and gender, speaking of racial and gender bias. And it resembles legislation that is, we saw it in the Sentinel, it's carried in some other states in a similar way. So I don't think that it goes to the matter of genocide or anti-Semitism, but clearly racial identity and gender bias are a part of genocide, and it would make it awkward to have that statute endorsed by the legislature.
I think my concern, Jay, is just that I know that the state board is involved in these discussions already, and whether it technically bleeds over into it, it's a mindset of already being involved in these discussions that I worry could negatively impact some of what we have going forward. So I just think we need to be just very aware of it going into it.
Thank you for making the link and broadening our attention. Any thoughts from our House members on this legislation?
No, my crystal ball is a little cloudy on this, but I think the governor has come out against the bill and what's in the bill. So we'll see what ultimately happens. I wouldn't guess necessarily on Thursday or with the budget. I mean, it depends on what happens with the budget. If the budget goes down, then we're over to the legislation. And I don't have a good sense of how the House is going to respond to either one of those.
I think I have to agree with Representative Ellison. It's, from what I hear, everything is up in the air at this point. I hope it doesn't stay in the budget.
Yep.
Well, and there we go. Some ambiguity on the horizon. Thank you. Dina?
I have a question on the text. Amanda, is the use of the phrase "as appropriate" in what you've written only attached to middle school where where the requirement is not later than 6th through 8th, or does that phrase "as appropriate" show up elsewhere in your draft?
No, it's as applicable is just in the middle school curriculum portion, because it starts at 6th grade.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said. So I kind of thought maybe at some point when we were reviewing the text that phrase showed up in the high school context, but I don't know for sure. So I'm just I'm just putting it out there. Maybe when you do your last review, you can
Okay.
do a search for that phrase as appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Brian, anything further?
No, I think that's about it. Anything else that anyone from our policy subcommittee would raise? Really, we've just been waiting for the state board to take the next step. So we're very grateful, as always, to have Nate's support and counsel. And Amanda, thanks so much for the work that you've done on this. And I'll be there on Thursday and we'll be available. And it sounds like Ashley will be as well. So we're happy to help any way we can. And we're just very grateful for the work that both of you have done to move this forward. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Just so you know, as far as the agenda goes for the state board, I never know when I'm gonna go, but it's roughly between 11 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just to give you a rough time frame. But thank you guys for having me, and I'm glad I could answer some questions for you.
Thanks for your help.
Welcome.
Thank you. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. And Nate, thanks for your counsel again.
Thank you. Anytime.
All right, moving on from our policies conversation then on to the best practices. And Dina, you hand raised, but you're muted.
Jay, I just wanted you to recognize Marna joined us.
Thank you. Sorry, I noticed that. Yes. Marna, thank you for, would you just identify where you are? And
Sure. I'm at my house in Manchester, and for right now, I'm by myself. My husband may return with the dog soon.
Thank you, Marna. I think we've got everyone else recorded as present. Best practices. Not sure, Ashley, is that on your plate?
So this past month, I kind of gave my committees for the last month away because I was dealing with some family stuff. So I know Marna saved me this past month. So I was not at any of the committee meetings this past month.
Marna, any update?
Well, so as it turned out, when we did meet, it was just Tom and myself. And we talked for a little bit, and that was it. There wasn't a whole lot of new information to cover. And we kind of felt like there wasn't enough representation either to have any discussions. Nothing could be decided upon. So we didn't really accomplish a whole lot at the best practices meeting. We had both looked at some material from other states, but didn't want to get into a discussion without the other members.
Okay. Thanks for persisting onward. Hopefully we, I think we recognize your work. The work of best practices will follow the policy evolution, and appropriately so. Dina?
Hi, so I assume Evan would be on the best practices group or policies, but it's just something to think about because we were told we couldn't have more than 7 actually meet at the same time. So I don't know how many there are in best practices, but it's something to keep in mind is if you can all like talk to each other by email, but if there are 8 people showing up, then it's actually a full commission meeting and other rules come into play. But
Right now, we only have 6 people because Kathy hasn't been attending the committee meetings. So, and Dina, I technically have you on that list too, but like you're not part of the committee. I just send you the notes.
Yeah.
So we definitely are under the number on the best practices if Evan is interested in joining our committee.
I'd be very happy to join that. Yeah.
Thank you, Evan.
You know that you have already been to meetings with me before, so.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So next, I'll turn to Tom White and the implementation committee. But Tom, you've also got a website that Keene State College has launched to inform the public, keep the public informed of the work of this commission. So Tom, I'll turn it to you to handle those two topics in whatever order you wish.
Terrific. Let me go to the site itself, and I hope can folks see that on the share screen?
Got it.
Yes.
Excellent. So this is under the Cohen Center, and it's a separate page. And looking down, basically, it has a series of folders here. Clicking on this, one could find the declaration for the governor for Genocide Awareness Month. And going back, we'll be adding some things to that momentarily. Commission has here, click on, has minutes, has interim reports, etc. All this is just accessible. Here are your minutes. And then down below are basically resources for educators coming to the page. So for example, you're looking at links, and this is links and resources here, and you'll have everything from best practices to clicking on that. You see different links to different education sites and lesson plans, etc. So it's a fairly useful site so far, we think, and you can play around with that. On the homepage here are basically standard links from Yad Vashem to the U.S. Museum in Washington and others. So, and then some Genocide Awareness Month programming here as well. So still a work in progress, but it has at least a number of good things on it. So I open any comments for that page or recommendations.
That page is live. Oh, sorry,
The
Ryan.
page is live, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that is outstanding, Tom. And we know that for this to be successful and for New Hampshire educators to successfully implement the intent, the legislative intent, they need resources. They need a place where they can go and get information that's going to continue on into the future. And this is terrific. So just thank you very, very much to you for your efforts and to Keene State College.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for putting that into words, Brian. Thank you, Tom. And I know that that's a work from on behalf of a number of people who helped edit that. So thank you for launching it.
Ashley, do you have a?
Yeah, I can't remember, but when we were talking to Nate, did they say that I know that they couldn't like host a website themselves, but I think that they said that somewhere that they could put like a link to a website or something if we had one on the New Hampshire like DOE page. I can't remember if that's what we said or not, but if that's possible, that would be awesome too, to get this link at least as a starting point for educators as they're starting to think about it.
On the DOE page?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like they had said that they couldn't host it, but that if we had something that they could link to it. So it might be good to send this over to someone there too, to see if they can put it on that page as an easy access resource for teachers in New Hampshire.
Sure, I'll do that. I'll do that right away. Thank you.
I'll be glad to. I can send
good.
Nate, and I'll copy you, and then he can follow up with you if that's possible.
That's great. Thank you, Jay. What was the other item? You mentioned two, and I'm sorry, I forgot the other item.
Well,
I see Dina's hands raised too.
The implementation committee and your meeting in March, and then I think there are probably there should be other programming taking place relative to Genocide Awareness Month that folks might want to be sharing.
Dina has a question, I think. Dina.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Dina.
You said it was live. And it looked like you had a link to the standard. Do you actually have the draft standard up there? Because that's not final yet.
I think we do have the draft. Let me just see here. And hopefully I didn't cut out on that page.
Thanks for asking that, Dina. I was wondering as well.
Well, I don't know if, oh, so that's actually, oh, okay. That isn't a final document. I don't know if it's appropriate to put that up.
Well, it's a commission. It's a final document from the commission.
Well then, but it's not the final standard, right?
Right.
Hasn't been adopted.
But Dina, it's in your minutes and our minutes are public. So either way, it's up there, but maybe we should write like, Tom, I don't know if there's a way to put draft over it or something so that when people click on it, they'll be able to recognize that those are in process. And Dina, maybe that covers kind of what you're saying. Because I get what you're saying. They're not finalized yet, but they are public knowledge.
Well, the minutes may be public, but I think we have to make it clear that those have not gone through.
Dina,
they've not been adopted yet.
You do a version then, because I'm sure Tom, like me, is working with a PDF. So
right,
you may provide him with a second PDF that puts as submitted to the Board of Education.
I can do that. I can and I will do that. I'll do it.
I think that's important to use the words as submitted to the Board of Education.
Perfect. And then I will fix that as soon as I get it.
Yeah, I had another observation, which is I mentioned before, I think when you get this all finalized, and it's really fantastic, Tom, but when it's finalized, I think you should distinguish between, it should be very clear to the person logging into the site what are the best practices and recommendations and materials recommended by the commission versus everything else you have on your site. So I don't know how you will do that. I mean, I can think of a number of ways of doing that, but I think that's important because not everything on your site will have been part of the recommendation of the commission.
Yep, easily done as soon as we get it.
Also, just as a future note for the links piece, I've written a piece on why Holocaust and Genocide education matters for the American Educator magazine of the American Federation of Teachers. That should be appearing in the fall issue, I think. And as part of that, John Sturtz has done a sidebar of resources for elementary, middle school, high school teachers, the most current. And the point is for people who read the article and become convinced it's important to do, these are the starting resources to help them do it. So I think it would be good to link to certainly John's contribution there when it's up.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim.
Jim, is that article, even if it's not published, is it something that you could share back with the commission members?
Probably the article will be done by May, early May. I can share it with the commission. There'll likely be some edits before it's published, but it's American Educator magazine is, I don't know, 30, 40,000 subscribers. So should go out to a good number of teachers, I think.
I'm familiar with the publication. You're right.
Terrific.
Representative Ellison.
Jay, I'm sorry, I have to get off for another meeting. I apologize. Thank you all for all the good work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Art.
Art.
Thank you.
Robert?
Thank you. I just had a question. Is the website is it like an official commission site, or is this something that Keene State does that serves as sort of a consolidator of like resources and articles like we just heard, that educators throughout the state can actually draw on? I'm just wanted to clarify the distinction. And then secondly, I actually have to leave at the top of the hour in a few minutes, so I apologize in advance.
I think the second way you described it is the appropriate way to describe it.
I think that's actually better because it allows for a lot of, it allows for Keene State in capacity as being academic experts to draw and actually provide a lot of resources and choice for educators, which I think is actually consistent with the entire way we've approached it. So it's
Great.
It looks really good, Tom.
Great, thank you.
That's a great clarification. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Tom. It needs to be something that is germane to the college, not something that's controlled by the commission.
Great, and I have no update for the implementation committee.
Okay, what I wanted to do is we have an opportunity for an open mic and I know that some of us have had contact with at least one of our attendees here. So I wanted to recognize Pat Yosha. And Pat, is this a good time to recognize you? So Pat, you do a sound check?
Is that better? Can you hear me?
And Pat, you were going to introduce your organization to us, and I'll give you a couple minutes to let us know what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you, Senator Kahn. And I see two familiar faces. Well, maybe one of them disappeared. I have had conversations briefly with Reverend Harmon and also with Rabbi Spivak Savitt about this. Our racial unity team was formed in 2015 as a response to the massacres in the AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. And we have since then developed quite a program, and I urge you to look at our website so you can see some of our work. But we have developed this mission, and I'd like to just read it. It's very short because I think it's in line and many points with the work of this commission and the goals of this commission. Our mission is to advance relationships among people of different racial identities, increase understanding, and reduce bias in our community. In order to do that, we've developed a racial unity trail that points out places in Exeter of historical significance in terms of racial issues, primarily sites of discrimination in our history. We have also prepared programs online that are fireside chats, we call them, where we've had training in understanding racism 101, colorism, for example. We've had teachers come on and talk about how they are revising their own social studies curriculum in their classrooms to include much of the history and culture that has not been part of the standard education. They have been social studies teachers and they've been very well received. I think I have been following the work of this commission, and our racial unity team has, with great interest. And one of the things that comes to mind as soon as you talk about this commission is what are the criteria for an adequate education? And for the most part, I think that you have dealt with that very well. But our racial unity team has brought up the question, and I have brought it to the attention of some of you, and maybe you've all seen this by now. There seem to be some terms that could be expanded, and I don't know if there's an opportunity for that to happen or not. For example, genocide. The only genocide in this country has been against the Indigenous people. Does the commission plan to exclude that from the recommendation of their standards or not? That's one of the questions I would put to you. The word anti-Semitism is used. But we're very concerned in our racial unity team, and I think most people who are anti-discrimination are concerned about other kinds of anti-Muslimism, anti-Black, anti-Asian. Those are concerns too. And I wonder if this commission is open to the idea of expanding their view. I know that genocide studies are very important. I couldn't agree more. And I know that many states have incorporated Holocaust and genocide studies. But it seems to me that in order to be looking at unity and reducing bias, we would recommend and hope that there would be an expanded view and that it would come in this commission's report. Some of you may have questions for me, or maybe Senator Kahn, you have wanted me to address something else. I don't know.
No, Pat, I appreciate your reaching out to me and others, and I appreciate that members of the commission, while this last month has been leaning up against the fire hose for legislators, that other commission members have gotten to talk with you. So others may have perspectives on this that they'd like to offer. And Reverend Harmon, maybe.
Sure. Well, I talked with Pat as well, and appreciate your input, Pat. And to my mind, it does make sense that I think you've heard us talk about Indigenous genocide in a way to talk about that here in North America, that is something we're working on. And I think also we've talked about in some of the commission meetings a kind of a pyramid that leads up to genocide, and these basic levels of the kind of like what you're talking about, where it can turn against people for different reasons, whether it's religion or ethnicity, and that can build up to genocide. And so I think those are things we're trying to consider, and it's just the struggle of how specific to be given the language that we do have from the legislation. But I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts or comments as well.
Because yes, go ahead, Ashley.
Hi, Pat, I'm Ashley. So I teach high school English, and definitely recognize what you're saying. It's something that we're trying to work on currently in our school. And I would actually love to have a separate conversation with you at some point about like ways that we can bring some of that in, like racial unity, into our school, because it's I'm also on an Education for Justice committee at my school. I know we are tied a little bit with the language of the statute, and that's kind of been this like balancing act for us, because the statute itself talks so specifically about the Holocaust and genocide studies. But like Reverend Harmon says, we are very cognizant, and I helped write some of those policy pieces. And one of the things when writing the policy was really thinking about the escalation of hatred and how we can talk about escalation of hatred and kind of teach it in this context of the Holocaust and genocide, but also then bringing in these other pieces. And while the statute doesn't allow us to name those other pieces because it's so specific, it very much is in the back of our mind that the hate that we see, when we're talking about the Holocaust and this rise of hatred and this building of the pyramid, it's called the Pyramid of Hate that Reverend Harmon was referencing from the ADL. It's online if you Google it. But like I use that when I teach about the Holocaust. And then we do talk about how we are seeing similar things in our country today with the different levels of the pyramid of hate. And so we bring in kind of all of those current pieces and our current history in the United States history. We try to bring that in through the teaching of Holocaust and genocide. So I don't know how we can put it into like language wise. I don't think that we can name it, but I just want you to know that it is like, as a teacher, it is always in the back of my head of ways that I can connect this to the world that we're living in today and our students and what they're dealing with today in our country.
And I'm sorry, I could add also, and hi, this is Tom White from the Cohen Center at Keene State College. As part of our programming that we're going to be providing for staff development as well, we address issues of process, and that is, you've identified beautifully what some of those processes are. And so that will be inherent in all of our training that we do going forward, whether it's explicitly stated or not. It is certainly part of our work anyway.
I just wanted to make one reference to HB 544 that's been brought up today, and whether or not that was going to be a concern in terms of the legislature and the work of this committee. We're very concerned about that too. The Racial Unity team has taken a very strong stand against that piece of legislation. You can see our statement on our website, and we've also made a very strong support of the people who are protecting, or we should say, we support the, we want to stop the Asian American and Pacific Islander hate statements. We've been very strong in terms of racial diversity. And I also wanted to add that though slavery is not per se genocide, it's also something that is about as devastating as genocide. And I'm listening to what Ashley is saying about the strict, what seem like restrictions on the language of the statute for which you are addressing. But we can't overlook the significance and the impact of slavery on our history. And that's not playing a very big part in the state social studies standards as far as we can tell.
Senator, I'm going to have to leave in a few minutes, so just want to let you know.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Ted. So Pat, I thank you for having contacted me and for your interest in this commission. And I'm sure you are probably in touch with Ani Malachi at the Human Rights Commission as well. And one of the things I was prompted by Pat's letter to me was to look for legislative history on Indigenous people and Native Americans. And I don't think it surprises us, but there is no mention in New Hampshire statutes of Indigenous people or recognition of harm inflicted on Native Americans, Indigenous people, or the recognition of those acts in a special day or honoring that past and the land on which we stand and live. So while there are clear connections that we can see as related to genocide and racial bias and prejudice, because the statute and the standards are so specific, I think we would need to take this on as a separate topic. So that's my concern. On the other hand, as we identify best practices, and that's an important committee to come back to, and Tom's website did show the best practices, Pat, to the extent that your group or any group has best practices in teaching about the violence and murder of Native Americans on our soil, that we could incorporate those best practices. I mean, the Cohen Center could be doing that independently as part of its references to materials on hatred and the pyramid of hate and the leading to mass violence and murder.
Thank you.
If I may, Pat, would you, oh, sorry, I have to, no, I am unmuted. Pat, would you feel free to reach out to me as well here at the Cohen Center?
Yeah.
And my email is pretty straightforward, twhite, like the color, at keene.edu.
Okay, will do.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you.
And Pat, please join us again. Share your activities. Tom, do you want to just highlight for us, so long as we're talking about the this topic and Genocide Awareness Month and making the link, you have a program coming up this month from the Cohen Center that touches on this, right?
We do indeed. I'll go back to the share screen, and I do have this up.
Good opportunity for promotion.
Excellent, thank you, Jay. And oh, there we go. Back to the commission page. Series of events coming up April 13th. Healing Spirit, the Power of Remembrance, Reflection, and Reclamation. The details are here. And specifically on the 22nd, a program about the Armenian genocide as well. And both of these are top scholars. This one, for example, talking here about, well, I'll let you read yourself. I don't have to reread this here, but again, looking at Indigenous peoples and their stories here on the 13th. And I think that gets a bit to what Pat had just mentioned, but those are two events that are coming up from the Cohen Center.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Jay.
Those will be accessed over the web, and those links are
yes.
They're on the website now. We could register for these now. Right?
Yes.
Okay. If you can take that down, and we can just, any other comments from our visitors? Okay, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I think any other business to come before us today? None. I do not yet have a, oh, wait a second, do I? A May meeting? I don't believe I do yet. No, I don't. So I'll try to work with Dina to, as we get the minutes out. I've asked for being able to schedule meetings on a monthly basis, and the Senate, because we'll be in budget season in May, wanted to reserve the opportunity to be programming on Mondays and Fridays. So that's why I don't have a May or June meeting scheduled at this point. Once we get past June, we'll be able to get 6 months of meetings out and on the schedule, maybe taking a month off and somewhere along the way. Yeah, Dina?
So I was wondering if 3 o'clock is too early. I think our original meetings were at 3:30, but several people were unable to be here today at 3. Is 3 too early for us? Should we meet 3:30?
I will say we've been pretty good about holding to 90 minutes. So
I'll just observe that we had a number of people leave early as well. So I don't know
Yeah.
if we back it up, if that helps, or we're kind of at the same spot.
Yeah, that's true.
Evan, did this time work out for you?
It works. It depends on the week. Sometimes we have faculty meetings on Thursdays. I'm currently directing a play, but I could schedule rehearsals around if I know in advance.
Now I remember you. That was the story you told in Senate testimony.
I believe it was, yes. Fiddler on the Roof, yeah.
Well, and he wrote a great letter too.
That, or you said through theater you were able to, yeah, okay, got it.
So I have another question. Is that all right?
Yeah, Dina, yeah.
Did we decide that what happened to the Native Americans was not genocide? I mean, no. So I didn't want to say anything because I don't know what you guys decided, but we chose the broad term genocide and decided not to start listing all of them because of, I mean, we made that decision, let's not list all of them because the list will be endless and we'll forget someone and we'll forget some group and that group will be understandably upset. So we just stuck with genocide except for the Holocaust. But that leaves it up to best practices to decide what genocide is. And well, I mean, you have the definition of the statute and what genocides to recommend. So isn't that really the answer to Ms. Yaffe? We haven't, if that's right, that we haven't said that Native American, that wasn't genocide, then
that
could be part of the curriculum. That seems like that's the short answer.
Dina, that's my understanding as well, is that we haven't ruled it out, and just that we weren't wanting to be specific with saying, at this point.
Yep. Ashley.
Well, and I think so some of that conversation might have happened in some of our smaller committee meetings too. Like I know we in depth talked about it like in our policy meeting at one point, right? Do we need to change our language? Do we need to list things down? So it might be just that we haven't talked about it here as much, like together as a whole group, though I know that we have. But I know she's also bringing in the other issues of, slavery and racial issues and, different kinds of hate that we see, and that those kind of hate are also important. And so how can we, I think a thought for best practices is how can we make sure that there's resources in there to teach about hate that maybe show that building ladder. And so like the pyramid of hate and things like that, so that we can get to a point where, we have resources on that people can use to teach about just hate kind of in general. And then we can go into some more of the specific genocides and show how like that escalation happens. Because I think when we look at some of the policy that we wrote, we tried to write it so that part of the policy is written that like we talk about the escalation of hate and how that can turn into genocide. So I think that we can add those resources in kind of a general way. I just don't think that we can like explicitly name them.
No, but with respect to
the Native American,
what happened, that's a different issue. And I'm not sure.
I saw them as like two different conversations almost.
It really is. And Tom, if she does reach out to you, and if that's correct, that we have not said that wasn't genocide, just explain that to her. We just didn't list all the genocides for the reason I just mentioned, and that doesn't mean we're not going to include Native Americans in best practices.
No, that's right. And you're perfectly right, Dina. I like what you said. And I know that Zach and Jim have been working on that as well, right, as part of the commission's work. So it's clearly within the umbrella of the work that we're doing. And I think you stated it perfectly well.
Well, it absolutely is. It's racial bias, hatred, genocide that's inclusive of what's occurred in our country relative to Native Americans.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
I do think, for a topic for another day and another legislative session is to talk with Pat Yosha about, and other groups. I mean, I think a conversation ought to be about, is this something that could be recognized at some point in the calendar? Some point in the calendar. It's whether it replaces something or like Columbus Day, or it has its own status. I think there was that's something for the state to consider. But the other side to that is we don't want the state to consider it and defeat it. So if this is a tide and a time when that's not going to be, because then we leave a legislative trail, and that's not a good thing if it's if the trail leads to and it was defeated.
Dr.
Yeah, and I don't know if recommending, I'm sorry, I'm just like, given 5:44, I don't know if now's a good time for someone to propose legislation on how slavery is taught. Oh my gosh, what a
awkward piece. Eve?
Thank you, Senator. I just want to remind the group that Rwanda will be commemorating genocide against Tutsi starting in 2 days, actually, April 7, and that will go on for almost 90 days. So it will be a good time to remember those who lost their lives during the genocide, and also to keep in your prayers and your thoughts those who lost their members during the genocide. And also I want to thank Senator Jay for the event last Monday. I think it was a really good event. The proclamation was well received, and for those of you who were not here, we had a small gathering in Keene, and it went really good. Thank you.
Thank you for part of that and sharing your personal interaction, involvement, and story about Rwanda, and just making it personal and real for us. And it is one of the things to recognize the people among us who live with the pain of past genocides. And so thank you for sharing that. Those articles were shared as material background for this meeting. And Tom, I don't know if you've had a chance to, with our mayor, to send that proclamation to the other mayors in New Hampshire. We were going to try to reach, it was part of the conversation in March, to reach all 13 of the mayors. And clearly our key mayor stepped up, George Hansel, to lead the receipt of the proclamation, which the governor specified he wanted to be received by the Cohen Center. So we presented it to Peter McBride, new director of the Cohen Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. If nothing else, Tom, are we still pending on that list?
We are. I've not received words. I just put a note to myself to contact him again. And on the New Hampshire Commission website, there are now photos of that day that Eve mentioned. And again, Eve, your presence there was so powerful, and I'm so grateful for it. and Jay, you as well for organizing that day. So there are images on the commission website, and I'll follow up with the mayor tomorrow.
Yeah, Dina.
Well, I was wondering if there was anything we could do to kind of get the word out to the school systems to do something in recognition of Genocide Awareness Day. I did shoot an email to my new friend, Commissioner at Old Blue, but I'm not, I'm kind of a nobody. So what do you, that was one question I had. And then another question I had was to Eve. Is there a website where survivors of the Rwandan genocide have their testimony the way there is for Holocaust survivors?
There are a different bunch of websites, and I can check some maybe that have some information and share with the group. I'll be happy to do so.
That'd be great. But Brian, what do you think about like trying to encourage, how can we encourage schools to do what, for example, Ashley's doing this week?
Well, I think that's a good question. The governor did send out the proclamation, so we did receive that as school districts. I know that I'm bringing it to my school boards to talk about that. The proclamation was issued that, you know, we're looking at some programming at the school level, but you know, I think it's going to take time for some of this work to really start to take hold, and certainly the getting things into the minimum standards is really the next big important step for all of us. But you know, it's certainly something that the Department of Ed could issue if they were so inclined to do.
Ashley.
Just had two thoughts. First thought, Dina, about the other testimony. So I do know that USC Shoah Foundation does have some testimony from other survivors as well.
I didn't.
Not a ton, but I know that there are definitely some because I use them within my classroom with my students. So there are some testimonies from other genocides, and I think that the Tutsis in Rwanda is part of that, I believe, because I've listened to a couple on there. And then just like a second thought about next year, now that we have this beautiful thing called Zoom, I wonder, and like everyone like can do presentations online, I wonder if there was something that we could do next year where like we commemorate things and try to get a lot of schools to all join one commemoration ceremony all together, whether it's even just like a, you know, something to recognize or some sort of programming like during the week where we have opportunities for like survivors to share their stories. Or there's a lot of programming like out there this, like particularly this week. Obviously I teach a Holocaust studies class, so I'm looking at the Holocaust Remembrance Day on Thursday, but so much that's available is like after school hours, which makes it really difficult. Like most of my students who are in that class work or they have sports after school. And so like I'm personally finding people and like bringing them in to speak to the kids this month. But it would be awesome if like thinking forward to next year, what can we do on a larger scale to give schools opportunities so that they maybe don't have to come up with the programming themselves. They literally just have to give kids the opportunity to zoom into something, and we can have some sort of commemoration that we do, whether it's what like Robert is having like one of my students do where they interview a survivor or whatever it is, but that might be a great way to go since we have this technology now. And why not continue
that
to
really
read it?
sounds great.
Yeah, Marta.
Ashley, I'm just wondering currently, not with what you're proposing for the future, but currently within your school, outside of your class, is there a lot that goes on, or is it mostly just the kids who are taking your class?
So in the past, it's been like all on me. So we do have, this year we started like a bulletin board thing that we have up all month. So like we rotate through, like we did Black History Month and stuff like that, Women's History Month. So this month I stole it, and it is genocide awareness. So I have poetry from my Holocaust studies students up there that we used. The proclamation is up there. I have some posters that I had with quotes and stuff like that. And then I have all this month, I've been scheduling some survivor speakers that are going to come in during the enrichment time, and those are going to be open to all students in the school. There are going to be, right now we're teaching night in both 9th grade and 11th grade, because with this switch it policy, we have to flip flop where it is in the curriculum so that it reaches all of our students. So all of them will at least have one survivor that they hear, but then I'm opening it up to the rest of school. I've had my principal put it out in the newsletter that gets sent out every week. But again, like I'm initiating all of these things. I feel like if I wasn't there, it would not be recognized. Or people just wouldn't like know how to recognize it.
But it is also reaching more students than just the ones sitting in your classroom.
Yep. Okay. Everything is open. I did that last year as well. At the end of last year, I want to say in either late May or June, I had a survivor who we were Zooming with, and I opened it up to the entire school, the entire actually school community. We had parents who joined us as well, since it's on Zoom. So there's going to be 2 that I'm having this year that the parents are also able to attend via Zoom if they want to. They'll be able to register with me for that. So I'm trying to open it up to as many students, because I think given the opportunity, many of them are interested and do want to learn. They just don't have necessarily the opportunities to do so, is what kind of I've gathered. And when I polled my kids, like who would give up their, FLT enrichment time to come see a speaker, like probably 75% of them had raised their hands. So we'll see how it goes.
Great.
Folks, I'm going to suggest before we start losing some others,
I'm going to go.
that we take the motion to adjourn. I think the conversation was very useful, and I think it tees up what the implementation committee can continue to talk about. We already made the link with best practices to try to be as inclusive there as we can of a host of genocides and the documentation that exists around those for curriculum. Brian?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you, Reverend. All right, I'll call the roll of those remaining. Eve?
Yes.
Evan? Brian?
Yes.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Nina?
Yes.
Reverend Zach?
Yes.
Arna?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jay votes yes. Thank you very much. And hopefully by the time we send the minutes, we'll have a date for a subsequent May meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Have a good week.
Don't forget
Yes,
that are planning to join that conversation in the Board of Education. Thank you.